If you're trying to conceive and feeling overwhelmed with fertility advice, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Don't Tell Me to Relax, your fertility podcast and antidote to unhelpful fertility information. I'm Hannah, a fertility acupuncturist, teacher and campaigner for better fertility education. This podcast aims to empower and inform you about your menstrual cycle and fertility. It's basically all that information you didn't get in sex ed at school, with the aim of improving your understanding of your reproductive health and optimizing your fertility. This is our second episode in our Men in May series. As part of the campaign, we're running a free event with Kirsty on Wednesday the 15th of May at 7:30. If you'd like to join Kirsty for the live Q&A or watch the playback, the details to join our support group are at the end of the show notes. Finally, if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us or send to a friend who might also find it helpful. Kirsty, welcome.
Thank you, Hannah. Lovely to be here.
You have now been on this podcast 3 times. You are the world record breaker. And that is not just because you're my lovely friend, but that is because I think nutrition really is so important for many aspects of fertility. And I don't think we can do a series about men without including nutrition for men. And so really, I thought it would be a good place to start is about discussing what the common problem is, because we hear a lot at the moment, particularly about you know what we're eating, the diet that we're having, the sort of Western lifestyle and Western nutrition. What is it specifically about our diet or nutrition that is harmful for male fertility?
Oh, where to start, Hannah? I think it's we tend to have a lot of processed foods. We're sort of eating on the run a lot of the time. But it's not just necessarily about the nutrition being poor in itself. It's also about the lifestyle, I think, factors as well, like being sedentary a lot of the time, smoking, vaping, alcohol, mobile phone use, all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just nutrition, but yeah, the high intake of processed foods, trans fats, high intake of sugar, high intake of caffeine, not enough essential fatty acids, not enough fruit and veg, not enough fibre. Like we're not generally hitting those food groups to maintain healthy sperm health.
And so there's been a lot of stuff in the press, hasn't there, about the decline in sperm and the idea that, you know, rates are halving. And so do you think, in your opinion, that is related to this sort of busy, new, modern life that we lead?
Yes, sorry, my builder's just waved at me.
Does he want to come in and tell us his opinion?
He just waved at me through the window. Sorry about that. Sorry, going back to your question, yes, which I've now forgotten, sorry. Yeah, I do think male fertility is definitely on the decline, and it has been over a number of decades, and that's been very well researched. That's not just my opinion, that is actual fact. And like we were saying just a minute ago, our lifestyle does not sort of lead to healthy sperm health overall at all. We're just not get hit in those food groups, and being sedentary and lack of exercise and all that kind of stuff really does play a role. And the more sugar and the more processed foods that we're having, the worse things are getting.
I guess also as well, it's really hard, isn't it, these days? I noticed the other day, you know, like when you go into a shop and I was buying, I don't know, like in the old days, you used to buy a bar of dairy milk, and it was like a small bar of dairy milk and it had like 6 chunks in it or whatever. And now everything is like supersized, isn't it? Like there is it feels like we are being kind of forced highly processed, highly, high sugar food, much more than we were 20 years ago. And I just think, you know, people can often feel a lot of like shame or guilt around their lifestyle or their diet not being, you know, as good as they would like it to be. But it's really, really difficult when you are surrounded by crap food at cheap prices everywhere you go.
Completely. And also it sort of comes from an education point of view as well. If we're not being taught to cook and where our food comes from and how to put together meals, and we're relying on essentially heating food up that's already been prepared, then that's having a detrimental effect as well. And I do think it comes down to us not, I mean, I've got some clients that have never cooked anything in their lives. They've never been taught to cook. And so they're all eating processed foods. And we're having to go right back to the beginning to say that you need to start putting your own meals together here, rather than relying on shop bought already prepared food. And also those sort of very high, a lot of people rely on those sort of very sugary, very caffeine heavy drinks as well to get through the day, I've noticed, like Monster and stuff.
I was just going to say,
Yes.
I mean, that,
Yeah.
what? There is nothing good in Monster, is there?
I mean, there really isn't. And I imagine if I drank one, I'd be up for days. I mean, they just, it's just terrifying. It's just terrifying. But a lot of people drink them. A lot of guys particularly seem to drink them. A lot of chefs randomly drink them. I guess it's because they're working long hours as well.
Yeah, so for that energy boost.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, you know, if you were in an ideal world talking to somebody about what they should be eating, a man for their fertility, what are the priorities? What would you be saying to them?
I would be saying, much like I say to the women as well, go for the Mediterranean style way of eating. So a higher intake of fish, a higher intake of seafood, lots and lots of veg, lots of fruit, whole grain foods. So you're really getting in all those antioxidants and brightly coloured foods that really help protect the DNA and the sort of shape and size and volume of your sperm. It's just really all of those brightly coloured food, making sure you're getting enough fibre in, olive oils, all those essential fats, all of those things. It's very similar basically to what the women eat, but but it is important to do it.
And in terms of sort of, let's sort because we talk about this a lot, and we are going to do a whole episode off it because it's so important in terms of starting the day. So in terms of like a good breakfast for male fertility, female fertility, what would you recommend?
I don't think that breakfast is as important for guys. I mean, I do think it does. I don't think it's as important.
You've come out and said it there, Kirsty.
Don't.
Hang on a minute.
But I do think it doesn't affect, from what I understand, and I'm very happy to be proven wrong, it doesn't affect their hormone levels fasting for longer periods as it does for women. I do also think, to counter my own argument, that starting with a good breakfast may mean that you overeat less crap later in the day, which I do think is important. And I still think you need a lot of protein, and it's very hard to get your protein in if you don't have a good breakfast, because you're having to eat an awful lot of protein later in the day, which, isn't necessarily ideal. But again, it's the same with everything. I think starting the day with a savoury breakfast with plenty of protein is not going to do you any harm at all. And also start the day with vegetables and as well, or berries, because they're high in antioxidants and it increases your vegetable intake. And I think a lot of people don't have veg with the breakfast or fruit. And missing an easy way to up your nutrients.
And so I guess just thinking about that, so in terms of not eating breakfast, so this idea of fasting to kind of reduce your calorie intake or as a means of like weight loss or maintaining weight loss, I guess for men actually that's important because there is quite a lot of research, isn't there, in being overweight and carrying fat around your middle and its impact on sperm health.
Yeah.
So in that respect, then fasting might actually be helpful, whereas for women it might not be.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it, because what fasting does is what we're doing with men being overweight. What's happening when men are overweight is that their testosterone is converted into estrogen by the way of aromatization, and if that process is happening and then they're becoming more estrogen dominant, then that's going to negatively affect their testosterone levels and overall sperm health. So, but body weight is important when it comes to male health, and maintaining a healthy body weight is really important, and fasting can play a role in that.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So in terms of tea and coffee, so we were talking about the Monster drinks. So a common question that people ask is around, should you give up caffeine when you're trying to conceive if you're a man?
Well, I always think this is about moderation, if I'm perfectly honest. And I think 1 cup a day is absolutely fine. But I do think it's about moderation, and you can't drink coffee and tea all day. It does negatively affect sperm health. And I think it's an easy win, if I'm perfectly honest, to reduce coffee to improve sperm parameters.
So what kind of would you say 1 cup a day is okay?
Yeah, I would say 1 cup a day is okay, but 1 cup, like one normal cup, not like one Starbucks cup that's the size of your head.
Yeah.
Like a normal cup of coffee that you're making at home, or one, like a flat white Americano size, but not one of those massive ones from,
Yeah.
from
And
a shop.
and what about tea?
Tea, again, I think it's about moderation. I think you just need to keep it under, I don't, like with anything, if you're fueling yourself and running off of caffeine, then there's something wrong that you need to address further down the line if you're having to depend on coffee and tea to get through the day. So I think you need to look at that and address it. And 1 to 2 cups a day is, in my opinion, is okay and won't have negative effects. But extreme coffee and tea or caffeine will negatively affect your sperm health in the long run.
Yeah. And I think I do see, I don't know whether this is just a generalization, but I do feel like there is, do men drink more coffee than women, or am I just making that up?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm just making that up.
Yeah, just making that up. I
We'll
don't
move
know.
on.
We can go with that if that's what you want to do.
I just think I guess what I hear lots of time is that obviously we don't work with many. I think you work with more men than we do in clinic, and often I hear via their partner that they fuel on coffee all day. It's like a common thing that I hear. So what I'm doing is I'm just passing on information from a very small number of people and generalizing.
Yes. Well, that's good. And actually, maybe you're right. But I think that having to run, when you're having to fuel yourself on coffee to get through the day, there's something else wrong there that you need to address. And I think that is really important. And I think that running off of sugar and caffeine is not good, because stress, as we know, will impact your sperm quality, but also really high levels of insulin all of the time will also negatively affect your testosterone levels. So I think that's something to be aware of as well with sugar, particularly, is making sure that you're not constantly fueling on caffeine and sugar to get you through the day. You need to start really making sure that you're fueling yourself properly.
So we always talk, don't we, about protein for fueling yourself properly. And I guess what lots of people do is they often do, like protein shakes. So quite popular with men and women after the gym, protein shakes. So am I right in that there are good protein shakes and there are ones that aren't so good?
Yeah, I think if you're going to have a protein shake, my advice would be to make your own with a very clean, good quality protein powder, rather than buying one from, I know they have them in like vending machines in gyms now, rather than buying one of those or one of the other sort of pre-made ones, because you don't know what's in those and they will have a high amount of sugar. And you can make a really good one with lots of berries, which are rich in antioxidants. You can put some good fat in there. So yeah, I think protein shakes do have a place for fueling you, but I would always make your own rather than shop bought ones.
Yeah, and am I right in that a lot of the protein powders have added sugar in, or like flavor? Like all protein powders are not made the same, are they?
No, a lot of them have. A lot of them do have a bit of sweetener in. The one I have has a tiny bit of sweetener in, not a huge amount, but sort of it does. But you can get very, very plain protein powders as well.
Which one do you use?
I use New Zest because I like them and I like their company.
Okay.
But there are really good, like the Organic Protein Company. They do very plain whey protein that's good. I think there's a number of others.
Okay, maybe we could link some at the end, because it's often, I think it's very easy to get drawn into, like, there's a lot of marketing, isn't there, around protein powders?
Yeah, there is.
So maybe we'll listen. I use the Pink Sun one. Have you heard? Do you know that one?
Yeah, Pink Sun. I
think that's not got any rubbish in it.
Yeah,
so
you just want it to be as clean as possible, and you can see, the ingredients are pretty clear on things. But yeah, I think definitely no crap.
So the other thing that I think is a basic but is often overlooked is drinking water.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So tell us, why is water important for health and for sperm?
Water is really important because if you're dehydrated, you're not going to sort of produce enough seminal fluid. And whilst it might not necessarily affect the count, being dehydrated is going to affect all the fluids that you produce in your body. So for overall health, generally, you need to make sure that you're drinking your 2 litres a day or more if you're exercising. Like, you need to be on it.
Yeah. And I guess one of the big markers is like how often you go for a wee. And what colour is your urine? So if you're not going for a wee very often and your urine's dark,
Yes.
it's a really clear sign.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or very strong smelling as well, because it's sort of
Yes.
thick and like you need to be on that.
And what about alcohol? Because again, coffee, alcohol are two questions that we get asked a lot. Some people completely give it up.
Yeah.
Some people reduce their units. Where do you stand on this?
It's a really difficult one. I think we know the problem is that we know the answer. It's just that no one really wants to hear it. It's that no one really wants to say it, and no one really wants to believe it. Alcohol really isn't great for your sperm health. But like, again, moderation is not is where you need to be at. Like, I think going for a pint at the end of the week or a glass of wine probably isn't the end of the world. But binge drinking at the weekend, where you go and drink 6 or 7 drinks, or heavy drinking throughout the week, that is definitely going to have a negative effect. And that, again, is an easy win in trying to improve the sperm parameters by reducing your because you can change. You can make such huge changes so quickly in sperm health. It's not like you have to give up drinking forever. You can just cut it back, or really moderate it for a short period of time and make a huge impact. So I think, yeah.
So what would, in terms of like guidelines, because it's really difficult, isn't it? Like what I mean, who even know what a bloody unit actually means?
I agree. So Hannah, I looked this up yesterday and I've scared myself. So basically what's happened is I've worked out that the UK government consider binge drinking to be, I can't remember what I said, drinking 8 units consecutively in one night. And a pint is 3 units. So basically you can have 3 pints and now that's considered binge drinking.
Wow.
Which I think was quite well, that was news to me, but I thought it would be. But so definitely moderation is key when it comes to alcohol use. It's not anything that we particularly want to hear. It does also potentially, if you're going to the pub, you're meeting your friends, you're having a chat, you're having a, you're unwinding. Yeah, then obviously I can see that's got benefits as well. But ultimately, alcohol's not great for sperm health.
So if 3 pints is binge drinking, what's moderation? Just 1 pint?
I don't know, Hannah. I don't know.
It's hard, isn't it? It's hard because it's so confusing. And lagers, let's say lagers, they're different strengths.
Yeah.
So it's mind blowing. So what about alcohol-free beers then, or alcohol-free wine, spirits? Yeah. Where do we stand on these?
I can see that I can see why people might. I don't think they're a bad choice necessarily. What I will say is, having looked a bit into how you produce non-alcohol free beer, they tend to have to put sugar or high fructose corn syrup in it to make it taste nice, because they're not fully fermenting it or they're not fully producing it in the same way. Therefore, the high sugar content, isn't great, because that's also having a negative effect. So I think that, yes, the alcohol, they're good from the point that you're not drinking, but they do have negatives as well.
Yeah, this is the problem, isn't it?
It's just a minefield.
Yeah, basically you just have to go to the pub and drink water.
yeah.
So you basically might as well not go to the pub.
Don't go to the pub. Go for a walk.
The other question that comes up a lot, and it's come up a lot this week in clinic, and actually on a live that I did with Ian, is around smoking. So we know that smoking it's a no-go. Like there's no arguments, there's no way around it, there's no nothing. It's like, you do not smoke, because it will impact your health, obviously, and your sperm.
Yeah.
What about vaping? Because vaping becomes a bit more murky.
Well, it does. It does. But I have looked. There isn't a huge amount of research carried out on humans at this stage. I guess vaping's only been around for, I don't know. I feel like it's like 20 years now, but I don't know whether that's true. But I was reading something. So there have been a lot of animal studies on vaping that even when they're nicotine free, the harmful substances can affect hormone levels and potentially affect implantation when it gets to that stage as well. That is carried out on animals. There was a Danish study in 2020 on men who smoke and who regularly vape, and they had a lower sperm count than those who didn't in this study. So it's not great. And also, I think long term, there just isn't the research there to say that it's safe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because I was working with someone today whose partner had given up smoking but had gone to vaping, and it was sort of the general assumption was, well, that's going to be better.
Yeah. Well, we just don't know. I mean, it is better. It is better in the fact that they're not having as much nicotine, but the other harmful chemicals that they put into the vapes to make them do whatever they do potentially can have detrimental effect. And the animal studies, in the early stages, do quite often then transpire into human studies where these things, we are seeing negative effects further down the line.
Yeah. And what about, because this was a question that came up on the live, was around, the mouth tobacco that is becoming popular, apparently. I mean, I didn't know that, but apparently it is. Know that. Yeah, it's called like snus or something like that, and you like put it in your mouth and you put it like it sits in your gum.
Why?
I don't know.
Why do people wanting to do that?
Don't know. But okay. I imagine, I mean, my thoughts on it is that, and I did have a quick look, and there was some preliminary studies showing that it is because it's going into your bloodstream, it's chemicals going into your bloodstream, therefore it's going to impact your sperm production and sperm health.
Yeah, and it's in your mouth, so it's affecting your microbiome, your oral microbiome, your gut microbiome. Like that to me does not seem like a good alternative.
Yeah.
I think even common sense there, I think, makes you think, this isn't a good idea. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So that's my view on that.
I agree. Basically, smoking, vaping, anything that's kind of a tobacco-related product in any form is not going to be helping your situation.
No.
Okay, so the other question that comes up a lot around nutrition and men is about supplements. So this is a really big topic, isn't it? Because often what we see is that people come into clinic on a big, long list of supplements.
Yeah.
And tell us about that. What are the problems and issues around that?
So I think with sperm health, from a general point of view, you could definitely not do too much harm by putting yourself on a really good multivitamin, if that was sort of broad terms. When it comes to specifics, I think you have to be really careful doing it without any guidance, because you can actually cause more damage than you are doing good. And I see a lot of people coming in on huge lists of things, and often they are very well researched things, and people really, as you know, people really know their stuff when they come to us. So they've done a lot of research, but you can cause more damage than good. So we take antioxidants, or we usually recommend antioxidants to sort of protect against reactive oxygen species, which are like essentially free radicals that can damage the sperm. But you do need an element of reactive oxygen species. They serve a purpose, like the little messenger dudes that go about doing things for you. So if you take antioxidants at a high level in supplement form that you don't need, then you're going to upset the balance between reactive oxygen species and antioxidants. It's all going to become unbalanced, and that can have a detrimental effect on sperm health as well. So I do think it's worth being careful. I would potentially also look at vitamin D as well and test. You can test vitamin D so easily yourself. And if you're low, take vitamin D. And if you're not, don't. That's quite an easy, straightforward thing to do yourself as well. But yeah, I think supplementation, you do need to be careful. And you can do so much through food that you don't like you can't supplement your way out of a poor diet, and that's
Mm.
true. Like you can't. There's no good putting in a really good supplement or supplementing with all these things if you're not getting those nutrients through your diet in the first place. So you could, you get lycopene from cooked tomatoes, you can get selenium from Brazil nuts, you can get zinc from shellfish, you can get there's so many different things that you can help sperm parameters that you could try first before you go nuts with the supplements. I
Got
get quite
nuts with your
passionate.
nuts.
Go nuts with your nuts. I get quite passionate about supplements because people come to me on so many and
Yeah.
they don't need to be on them.
So when you're doing working with a couple or you're working with a man, how do you determine the level of antioxidants to suggest to that person?
Well, we would test, don't guess. I can't remember who said that originally, but I like it and I use it a lot. Test, don't guess. But you would also, it depends on the parameters that we're struggling with. So, there are various different supplements that have been researched to support various different parameters. So, and some do support, or like lycopene affects many parameters, but there are some that are more specific. So we would be very targeted with our approach, really, and we would take their lifestyle and their health and how much exercise they're doing and what other factors are leaning into consideration as well. We would, so if they're leading a pretty toxic lifestyle in many ways, and they probably need more antioxidant support than someone who's eating a fairly balanced diet but still struggling with poor morphology, for example. So it's about looking at them as a whole and then working with them.
So in terms of if someone's listening to this and they just want a general kind of advice, then you're saying vitamin D and a good multivitamin is enough.
Yeah, well, I'd say good multivitamin is enough to start with for just doing basic, and test your vitamin D, especially at this time of year when the sun is at some point supposed to shine, because you don't necessarily need to supplement at this time of year. But yeah, it's good to make sure you've got good levels. But yeah, a really good multivitamin is a really good place to start to cover your bases.
And there are ones out there, aren't there, that are specifically for sperm health? There's like Proceive, Impril. I know Test Him have just brought out a new one. Are they, when we're talking multivitamins, are we specifically talking about those ones that are for men's health, or are we just talking general multivitamin?
I tend to go, because as those ones that you've mentioned are great and really useful, and I use them in clinic. But when I haven't seen anybody and we've not done a consultation, I would always go for a broad multivitamin, just off of a good one, not not a supermarket owned one or a like a shop owned one. I would go for a really good one.
And in terms of like foods, like antioxidant foods, are there any particular ones that I presume you sort of say to people, right, add these into your diet?
Yeah, I do. Cooked tomatoes is one I use all the time because lycopene covers so much more, and it's much more available if you cook the tomatoes first. So that's that's easy way. Berries full of antioxidants, nuts and seeds packed full of useful benefits. What else do I often recommend? Leafy green vegetables, all of that kind of thing. I've got a handy little chart here that I always, making sure you've got good iron levels, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin K, like all those, like foods that contain all of those kind of nutrients are really important.
Yeah, and I guess what we always say is that if you're eating a broad spectrum, you will be covering that anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Mediterranean style way of eating with with a real focus on fruit and veg, you'll be hitting a lot of those food groups. We overcomplicate nutrition, I think, so much.
Yeah,
like it's dead easy.
I agree.
You just need to like do the basics and do them well, and we would all feel 100 times better.
Yeah, and I guess it's about eating things that are not processed, like eating things that are you're getting them in your hand or your cupboard or wherever in their original form, and you're cooking with them from scratch. Yeah, it's not rocket science,
no,
really,
it really isn't. No, we overcomplicate it hugely, but eating a really good variety of fruit and veg that's, and eating it when it's in season as well is really good. And you can find that out really easily online. And you can just say, right, well, these vegetables are in season. I'm going to eat those because the nutrients will be much more available for your body to absorb. They haven't sat in the dark for traveling over from miles away. You're eating them, they've been grown close to where you live. It's much better way of eating.
And I've completely forgot what I was going to ask. No. Oh, I know. I've got it. And any sort of guidelines around, because life is life, isn't it? And let's be realistic. Are we assuming like the 80-20 rule applies in this situation again? Because, rather than kind of have to go all out, we're saying, 80-90% of the time, maybe if your sperm analysis was not where you want it to be, like 90% is a good target.
Well, it has to be what it has to be is sustainable. Really, you want it to become your lifestyle, because if you know you're damaging your sperm, then generally, I think long term, you think, well, I want to be fixing this for the long term. So it needs to be sustainable. So 80-90% of the time, doing your very best. And also, you can make such huge changes to your sperm health by changing a few things. Like, it's definitely worth making the effort to do that.
Because that's the thing that we were talking about, weren't we, before we came on. The great thing about this is that you can get a poor sperm analysis. You can go to somebody like yourself, do a 3-month program of nutrition and retest, and you can see the impact.
Like it's an absolute no-brainer. Like, unless there's a physical reason for why your sperm health is, not where it's supposed to be, lifestyle and nutrition changes will change it dramatically.
Yeah. And it's interesting because of all the episodes that I've done and all the specialists that I've spoken to, whenever I say, what can you do? How can you prepare, whether it's IVF or getting pregnant? Everybody now, there is a general consensus that nutrition is a key foundation to all of this.
No, but it makes absolute sense, really. It's like we've got to look after ourselves better, right from the sort of, but it's really easy. We're just not quite doing it yet.
Yeah, and I guess it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's like real common sense, and it is straightforward, but it is difficult in a world that just sells you crap all the time. It is.
Constantly sells you crap, and also constantly trying to sell different ways of doing things. And it's overwhelming. Like, you can find an argument. I'm doing some research on something else I'm doing. I found so many different counter arguments for the same thing that if you didn't know what you were looking for or how to sort through that research, it's hugely overwhelming and hugely mind-boggling, and no wonder people don't know where to start. But really taking everything right back to, I'm going to eat 3 meals a day, I'm going to include protein, I'm going to have half a plate of fruit and veg, I'm going to make sure I'm getting some good fat. You're like 75% of the way there.
Drink water, don't drink booze, don't smoke fags.
Try not to nail the sugar continuously throughout the day. Like, it's and that's the way that we can. But there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise in the world with people trying to tell you that, you need to do this and you need to do that and you need to, but you just need to go right back to basics. And most people know what to do.
So thank you, Kirsty, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Sorry, I was just doing that because I've got a big magpie at the window. It's all going on today.
You need to salute
magpie builders. Oh yeah, salute. So you are going to be doing a live Q&A. So if people have got specific questions that they want to bring and ask about nutrition for men, supplements, then Kirsty is going to be in our community group on Wednesday, the 15th of May at 8:00. It's live. It's free to join. You just have to register or email us your questions. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for doing that, because I know it'll be really helpful. And I know people have specific questions that they want to ask to an expert. So it's amazing that people can access you.
No, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
If you've enjoyed listening to this and want to find out more, then come and join my free community in Facebook. We have loads of resources. You can catch up on all our previous webinars and be the first to know about forthcoming events. To sign up, just follow the link in the show notes. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with myself or one of the team, then please see our website, hannahpern.com, where you can book in directly or organise a discovery call to find out how we can support your fertility and your reproductive health.